There was a time in my life when fishing was life. I would go extreme measure to try to obtain new spots for my fishing addiction. I've been all over my little town of Gainesville. Catfish is my addiction because you can throw the line in and pop open a cold beer and just wait. These moments are what I live for. The thought of a giant lurking in the bottom of the water is an excitement any fisherman understands. One day, while driving through a random road, I found a river, and right beside that river sat a barely structured house. The house still seems like there were people living there. There was a beat-up red car in the front of the driveway. The house looked horrible, but hey, people's got to have shelter, I shrugged. My nerves never get the best of me, especially when it comes to fishing. I will knock on any door to ask permission to fish. I pull into the driveway and proceed to walk up the front porch. An old lady opened the door slowly while I approached. She smiled and said hi. It's been so long since I've seen anyone walk these porches. What is the occasion today, young boy? I laughed. Well, you see, I was wondering if you'd be kind enough to let me fish behind your house. I see there is a great fishing spot right behind your house and would love to fish here if it's not too much to ask. I could bring you a few fish too when I do. And of course, when I come, I can give you a call before I arrive. The lady smiled and said, come anytime you want. I don't have company much these days. We used to fish that river all the time before my old man passed away. There's plenty of fish there. You will love it here, she said. Oh, you're not living here alone, are you? The lady looked down and replied, honey, I've been alone for many years now. My grandkids don't ever come visit me. I'm so lonely. I'm turning 80 this year. In fact, it's in a couple weeks. Happy early birthday. Sorry to bother you. So in this case, tomorrow I'll see you. She smiled and nodded yes. I was so happy I jumped a little. In the car driving back, I smiled the whole time back to my apartment. I might have just got me a new honey hole, money hole, hotspot. No one's going to know where I'm catching my fish now. I got home and started gearing up for tomorrow's surprise adventure. The next day, I arrived early and knocked on the old lady's door. She was already up. I told her I'm heading to the back of her house to fish. She said okay, and I walked my way around the side of her house. I'm looking around, and I tell you what, this place has not been touched or cleaned in who knows when. The weeds is up to my chest. There's no trail whatsoever. Any trail that was here before definitely is here anymore. Good thing I brought a machete. I start smacking away at the weeds, creating my own line to the river. The river is about 40 yards from the old lady's house. There are trees everywhere before you get to the bank of the river, so looking back you can't even see the broken down house much. That day I brought 3 rods and I couldn't even use all 3. Every cast I was catching fish. Largemouth fish, whitefish, hybrid fish, striped fish, you name it. I couldn't believe what was happening. This is my secret spot. Now it's 7 p.m. It's getting dark, so started heading back to my car. I glanced at the house when I approached the more cleared area behind the house, and there stood the old lady at the window. She just smiled at me. What a creepy feeling that was, I thought to myself. The fish is awesome thought. I didn't think much. I got in my car and drove off. A few days passed by, and I decided to go back to the old lady's house. She greeted me the same with a nod, and I went on my way. That afternoon, I asked the old lady if I can camp out whenever I want to do some night fishing. She said, of course. That made my day. It just keeps getting better until a few months passed, and I decided to go back there to fish. During this time, I had been going there so often that the old lady just waved at me when she sees me pulling down the driveway. During a hot summer day, I decided to do a camp-out night. I haven't been to the place in a week, and my fish fever was at 100. I got me some catfish bait and headed towards my hot spot. When I arrived, the old lady didn't come out to greet me this time. I knocked on the door, and she didn't come to the door either. The light was on, so I didn't think much and walked on back to the river. That day, the fish was not biting much. I must have killed this spot, I laughed. Time to catfish up. It's about 8 at night, so I grabbed my rods and put some bells on the rods. Now, if you don't know what these bells are for, it's for when you fish at night and can't see that there is a fish biting at the end of your line. When the fish pulls the line, the bell will ring or shake, making a noise telling you that there's a bite. That night, I had 3 rods ready to rumble. My tent was up, I had coverage under a tree, and the weather was perfect. Perfect except the slow night in which no bells was ringing, except the farthest rod on my left. Every single time that bell rang, I could never pull that darn fish in. I was getting so irritated. Stupid me forgot to bring a flashlight, so I had to rely on my fire pit to help me. That didn't do much good. The visibility was horrible. That darn bell, I swear. Sometimes it would ring every couple seconds and stop. I just kind of gave up walking to that damn pole. Around 1 in the morning, the wind started picking up. There's this weird smell I had been smelling, but with this wind, I definitely can tell it's something rotting. In disgust, I decided to end the night. That last rod to the left is still ringing. I walked over and pulled really hard one last time. What in the world? It stinks. I threw down the rod. I'll deal with this in the morning. I can barely see. The next day, I woke up bright and early. I had to do a major fountain spill, but I wanted to fish a little before I head on out, so I grabbed the closest fishing pole and walked the shoreline away from my campsite. About 1 hour in, the fish was still not biting that great. Welps, it's time to go home. I'm walking back to camp and looking around the area. That awful smell. There's got to be a dead deer around here somewhere, I thought to myself. I'm almost to my campsite and I freeze in shock. That old lady had hung herself on that tree I so called my shelter. I was literally camped right on top of her. I ran to my car and called the cops. When the cops came, I took them to the tree and I asked him what I should do. He said I have to leave everything that I don't need because they will have to investigate. I did, however, get to go into my tent and grab a few things. I glanced at the fishing pole and I froze in horror. That last pole that was ringing all night was exactly right under the hung lady. The bell was covered in red. It definitely looked like blood. So, the blood was dripping on my pole all night, I whispered. I threw up knowing the fact that I thought the whole time it was a fish. The cops said I could leave and they will be contacting me soon. A few days went by, and I got a call from a detective saying that there was no foul play. The lady hung herself. You know, she must have been very lonely and sad. Her time was near, and she probably decided to end it sooner. I still fish a lot today, but I will never so stupidly to not look around my surroundings, especially trees. This has haunted me for quite some time. I catch myself looking up from time to time or just stare at a tree near the lake. I don't know if I think I will find another dead body hanging or am I simply traumatized. I hope everyone going out to enjoy the wild never encounter what happened to me. Thanks for listening to my stories. Please like and subscribe for more upcoming scary stories. If there is a story you would like to hear, drop a link in the comments. Again, thank you.